Ladies and gentlemen, I am SidAlpha. Now, late last night I posted a video that I ended up taking down and issuing a formal apology for, as the content of that video was highly emotionally charged and ended up being a disservice to both the recipient of my misplaced frustration and to the viewers. That video came very much from a place of emotional strain and anger over some recent events that are not really pertinent to the discussion, and so I will leave them out moving forward. Instead of coming from an emotional place, a video discussing such topics really should come from a place of logic and reason, something that was virtually absent in my previous video. However, at its core, there was an actual topic that I still feel bears discussing, but not from a position of attack, not in a misguided attempt to retaliate over a perceived slight or slander, but from a position of genuine contemplation and reason. Now, that topic results from a statement made by the developers of the video game Gloom, a 2D roguelite that focuses very heavily on the concept of permadeath and learning patterns of behaviors for a variety of enemies in order to progress through the game. Now, as opposed to the previous video, we're going to take a look at their statement again and analyze things in a more reasoned fashion, as I do feel that the discussion and the intent behind some of this could serve to benefit consumers as a whole. The developers had this to say: "I don't expect you to change your review to positive, since you obviously had issues with the core premise of the game and its genre, but it's always nice to update reviews to fairly reflect the current state of the game." Now, I did do a video in regards to this in the past, where I had been approached by an indie developer who literally did flat out ask me to change or remove my review, as they had patched the game and they thought my review was negatively impacting their sales. I didn't really understand their reasoning at the time, as my review was very much in the positive for that game, and I thought it was quite good and well worth the asking price. Again, in that instance, my response was almost certainly overkill, but there is a good discussion to be had to argue for and against both sides of the idea. The idea being that at what point is a review no longer indicative of the experience that a person will have with the game? Now, this is very cut and dry with early access titles, as it is almost a certainty that within a few days, weeks, or months, any form of review based upon the game is realistically meaningless as far as current information is concerned. This is, of course, due to the fact that the game is in a stage of active development, or at least we fervently hope it is. That reason is also very much why most critics will not review an early access product. It's because the review will not be indicative of the final product due to the game's development creating a very transitory nature. But what about games that aren't in early access? Games that have reached the full release state and have launched as a feature-complete product? Now, several YouTubers, including Total Biscuit, Jim Sterling, and Nerd Cubed, have dealt with these issues in the past, and we've all pretty much come with a fairly emphatic response in those instances. Each and every time, it was a most definite no. The reasons behind that is, if and when a feature-complete game is released at launch, it comes with it a certain level of expectation of core functionality. One should be able to be reasonably certain that a game at launch will be functional and reasonably free of bugs and glitches, and that there will not be any sweeping changes made to the game outside of additional content, such as DLC or map packs or other such sundries. Now, in that instance, a revision to a review would be unnecessary and unwarranted. To refuse a revision to the review under those circumstances, I feel, is exceptionally justified, as if a developer does release sweeping changes to their game post-launch, then they are essentially passing off an incomplete product as a finished one, which is a dishonest business practice and not one that I would condone or support. Now, that serves two separate functions. The first being, of course, to educate and inform any gamers looking to gather information about a game before they purchase it. The second is also as a stark reminder to games developers that if you expect to charge people money for your game as a finished product, then it is going to be treated by the world as a finished product. And if it is deemed broken or incomplete, then you have only yourself to blame. Now, I know for a fact that a great deal of games developers would love to see their reviews for their games updated after they fix whatever is wrong with their product. This would no doubt cast the game in a more positive light, and as such be seen as being more attractive to prospective buyers. However, such a thing is not something that you will see a reviewer do very often. I will be doing so for my review of Gloom, not out of a sense of fair play, but out of a sense of responsibility for an ill-conceived and overreactive video that over 1,000 people saw before I relegated the video to a private setting. But if any developer out there honestly believes that it is a reviewer's responsibility to update their reviews based on patches for a game that is being sold as a full release game, then you will most likely come to a very quick and very rude awakening. I mean, I do this as a secondary job currently, and I can't possibly keep up with even new games that come out on a daily basis. Even if this was all I did 24/7, I would never be able to keep up with the influx of new titles. The very idea of reviewers updating their reviews on top of that is ludicrous in the extreme. But that said, after I've given it some thought, It never hurts to ask. As long as you're nice about it and understand that the reviewer is under no obligation to do so, sure, go right ahead. Who knows, maybe the reviewer really wanted your game to be good, but there was something fundamentally broken with it at the time of the review and you've since corrected it, or maybe the reviewer will think of you as a nice person and want to help you out. But please understand that if you do ask them, that it's not their job to cast your game under the best light possible. It's merely their job to present the game as honestly as possible and provide their impressions at the time of the review. Now, it's an interesting thing that merely 24 hours ago I felt offended at even the notion of changing one of my reviews, but after some sleep, a fair amount of food, and a few hours of exercise, I can honestly say that my outlook has changed on this topic a fair amount. My previous no longer viewable video was very much a rant based on how inviolate my reviews are and how dare someone imply or infer that I changed them to suit their own ends. I mean, seriously, what a pompous dick, right? It's really not that bad, and if the request is reasonable and there is time, I might just do that. Because while yes, a reviewer should always put their viewers' right to information above all else, we still have to remember that it is a game and games are supposed to be fun. If something changed to make a horrible experience into what could be a positive one, shouldn't that be shared with our viewers? Shouldn't that be a consideration as well? One experience I would like to remind everyone of is my first impression of One Sole Purpose, a game that I thought had a fairly good premise, looked good, but felt far from finished. As a result of my review, the developer pulled the game from sale for more work to be done on it, and I consider a situation like that to actually be a win for everyone involved. The developers get some positive publicity from his willingness and desire to put out a quality product, and the rest of us get a better game as a result. I look forward to reviewing that game for a second time once it's re-released, and I fervently hope that its relaunch is a resounding success. Now, I cite that as an example, not as an excuse to toot my own horn, as it were, but as a case in point that perhaps in some instances there really is a possibility of having a second chance at a first impression. Of course, though, please do let me know what you think down in the comments below. Links to all the things are in the description, and if you're new to the channel, please do remember to subscribe. It helps out more than you might think. Once again, I am SidAlpha, and thanks for watching this second attempt at a discussion that should not have been as complicated as I had originally made it out to be.